In the quantum world, a particle exists in a state of superposition, a delicate cloud of probabilities, where multiple realities coexist until observation collapses the wave function into a single outcome. This concept, strange as it may seem, is not confined to the realm of subatomic particles. It whispers a tantalizing possibility about consciousness itself, that human awareness, like a quantum system, may interact with the field of potentialities that underlies all reality. The quantum field is not empty. It seethes with virtual particles and latent information, an invisible sea of possibilities. In this view, every choice, every thought, every moment of awareness is like a measurement, collapsing certain outcomes into form while leaving others unrealized. The future, then, is not a single predetermined thread, but a vast network of entangled possibilities waiting to be shaped by attention and intention. Meditation, in this framework, becomes more than a mental exercise. It may serve as a tuning mechanism, aligning the conscious mind with deeper quantum patterns that define what is probable or improbable. By calming the noise of habitual thought, one may access a subtler layer of reality, a space where the wave of potential futures is not yet collapsed. In this quiet domain, the mind becomes less of a passive observer and more of an active participant in the shaping of time's unfolding. Modern interpretations of quantum mechanics, such as the many worlds view, propose that all possible futures exist simultaneously, each branching off in its own trajectory. While this remains theoretical in physics, it inspires the notion that consciousness may act like a lens, choosing which version of reality to focus into from the spectrum of options that quantum indeterminacy offers. This reframing suggests that change is not about forcing reality to bend, but about learning how to attune oneself to a different vibrational pathway that already exists in the superposed landscape of the possible. When a person holds a focused intention with emotional coherence, the quantum field responds not in a mechanical way, but through resonance. This is not magical thinking, but a hypothesis aligned with the notion that coherence in a system can influence probability distributions. If consciousness plays any participatory role in the quantum process, then emotional clarity, belief, and attention could serve as instruments for navigating between probable futures. In this sense, a quantum leap in consciousness is not a metaphor but a shift in identification, from a self bound by memory and habit to a self aware of its position in a multidimensional field of potential. It is not about changing the past, but about stepping into a future that already exists in potential form, one which becomes visible only when the observer changes their frequency of perception. The quantum fabric of reality does not unfold in a straight line, it pulses, oscillates, and teems with branching probabilities. At its heart lies superposition, the principle that systems do not exist in a single state, but in many, all at once. Only when measured or observed does the system choose one outcome. This fundamental rule of the subatomic world suggests a radical implication: the future is not written in stone, it is written in waves. Just as an electron can exist in multiple orbits until observed, the future of a human being may also hover in a field of unrealized possibilities. These are not abstract metaphors, they echo the physics of quantum fields, where every point in space contains a spectrum of virtual events and interactions. In this view, your life's trajectory isn't a fixed narrative, but a probabilistic waveform waiting to be collapsed into reality through your attention, emotion, and intention. Consciousness, still one of the greatest mysteries of science, might not simply observe reality from the outside. It could be entangled with it. Quantum entanglement shows that two particles, once connected, remain linked regardless of distance. Change one, and the other responds instantly. Some theorists speculate that consciousness might be similarly non-local, tapping into a field of interconnected information beyond spacetime. This opens the possibility that what you focus on, deeply and consistently, could influence your timeline, not through magic, but through resonance with a version of the future that already exists in quantum potential. Meditation, in this context, is more than stress relief or mindfulness. It becomes a method of stepping out of the noise of linear thinking and into the silent quantum substrate where choice is still fluid. In deep meditative states, brainwave patterns shift toward coherence, alpha, theta, and gamma rhythms synchronize. This coherence is not only neurological, it may reflect a harmonization with the coherent structures of the quantum field itself. The calmer the brain, the less turbulence in thought, the more clearly one may sense the latent potentials available in the field. If thought is energy, and energy influences matter, then thought may act like a wave function, shaping the probability landscape of the future. Emotion, in turn, acts as an amplifier. A fleeting wish has little weight, but an intention held with clarity, repetition, and elevated emotion might serve as a kind of quantum measurement, a selection of one possibility from a sea of alternatives. It is not that you control the universe, but that your internal state determines which version of the universe you are tuned into, like selecting a radio frequency from a spectrum of invisible channels. The idea that we live in a participatory universe was championed by physicist John Archibald Wheeler, who proposed that observation does not merely reveal reality, it helps create it. This concept, still debated, nudges the door open to a startling possibility, that your future is not waiting for you to arrive, it's waiting for you to choose. The shift begins within. It is not a forceful push through external events, but a realignment of internal variables that affect what kind of future collapses into your lived experience. Each decision, thought, and focus of attention is a micro-observation. Over time, these micro-choices steer your path through the quantum field like a series of navigational pulses. Most people unknowingly follow the same feedback loops of emotion and belief, collapsing the same outcomes again and again. But the moment you become aware of this, and begin to observe your thoughts rather than be controlled by them, you create the first ripple of change. From this perspective, rewriting your future is not only possible, it is inevitable once the observer becomes aware. The quantum leap is not into something new, but into something always available, a parallel self, a parallel life, vibrating on a slightly different frequency. And through practices like visualization, breath work, deep meditation, or even acts of profound gratitude, the brain and body begin to signal a new reality before it manifests. This is not pseudoscience, it is the convergence of neuroscience, quantum theory, and ancient wisdom. This convergence gains increasing attention in both theoretical physics and cognitive neuroscience. While mainstream science remains cautious, certain experimental hints invite deeper exploration. In quantum physics, the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment demonstrated that the act of observation doesn't just determine a particle's behavior in the present, it can retroactively affect its past state. In this experiment, whether or not which path information is available after a photon has passed through a double slit determines whether it exhibits wave or particle behavior. The implication is staggering. Time may not flow in a single direction, and observation, akin to conscious awareness, can influence the temporal structure of events. This raises profound questions about free will and temporal plasticity. If events are not strictly chained in linear cause and effect, but influenced by boundary conditions, like final states or retrocausal observations, then future outcomes may, in principle, shape present experiences. This parallels emerging ideas in neuroscience, where predictive processing models suggest the brain is not a passive receiver of input, but a proactive simulator. It constantly predicts sensory input based on internal models, and only corrects them when the outside world provides contradictory data. In other words, perception itself is a top-down process, biased toward expectation. Now consider what happens when the mind begins to generate not just expectations based on the past, but coherent, emotionally charged visions of the future. Studies using functional MRI have shown that vividly imagining a future experience activates similar neural substrates as recalling a memory. The default mode network, often active during mind-wandering or visualization, becomes engaged in constructing internally consistent realities, realities that, while imagined, exert measurable influence on mood, hormone levels, and behavior. Add to this the role of placebo effects, one of the most replicated phenomena in medicine. Placebo responses suggest that belief alone, when structured and embodied, can alter immune response, neurochemical balance, and even gene expression. Epigenetic studies reveal that mental and emotional states can influence gene transcription, meaning your internal state has downstream effects on cellular behavior. From this, we gather a compelling through line: the observer, when focused and emotionally aligned, may not only perceive but participate in biological and quantum processes of change. From the standpoint of quantum field theory, QFT, all particles are excitations in underlying fields. The electron is not a thing, but a ripple in the electron field. Likewise, the electromagnetic field gives rise to photons, and so on. If consciousness is indeed fundamental, as some interpretations like Orchestra by Penrose and Hameroff propose, it may interact not at the classical level, but at the level of quantum coherence. Hameroff's controversial theory suggests that microtubules within neurons may support quantum processing under specific conditions, essentially treating the brain as a macroscopic quantum object. Although widely debated, the search for quantum cognition is underway. Researchers have noted that certain human decision-making patterns follow non-classical probability distributions, better modeled by quantum logic than traditional binary logic. This suggests the mind may function, at least in some aspects, in a way that reflects contextual superposition, holding multiple incompatible thoughts until one is chosen, akin to a collapse of internal probability. Within such a framework, meditation and intentional focus might reduce decoherence, allowing fleeting contact with this deeper substrate. The chaos of daily thought, rumination, fear, distraction, acts like environmental noise, decohering the delicate state of superposition. But in the stillness of deep meditative absorption, the system, you, becomes temporarily isolated, allowing quantum coherence to stabilize. This coherence might enable access to a broader phase space of possibilities, from which a new trajectory, your rewritten future, may be selected. Thus, changing your life may not be about fighting against what is, but aligning with what could be, by entering into resonance with another state that already exists within the infinite lattice of the quantum field. In this view, transformation is not a climb up a ladder of effort, but a phase transition, a sudden, nonlinear shift into a more ordered, more meaningful configuration of being. To further ground these ideas in science, we must examine the nature of probability amplitudes, Hilbert spaces, and the mathematical machinery of quantum mechanics itself. In standard quantum theory, the state of a system is represented by a vector in a Hilbert space, a complex, multidimensional construct that encodes all possible states a system can occupy. The Schrödinger equation governs how this state vector evolves over time, with no predetermined outcome until a measurement occurs. This is where the role of the observer, still philosophically and physically debated, enters the frame. The process of measurement introduces a discontinuity in the otherwise smooth evolution of the quantum wave function. This is known as the collapse postulate, and it remains one of the most mysterious aspects of physics. Interpretations differ. The Copenhagen view sees the wave function as a tool for predicting outcomes, while the many worlds interpretation, MWI, claims all outcomes happen, each in a separate branch of the universe. Cubism, a modern take, treats quantum probabilities as subjective degrees of belief, placing the observer squarely at the center of reality construction. If quantum mechanics is fundamentally a theory about information and belief updating, then the observer's expectations are not mere byproducts, they are part of the physical narrative. The very structure of the quantum formalism relies on Bayesian reasoning, where prior knowledge affects the likelihood of outcomes. In this sense, the brain, a Bayesian inference engine, already operates like a quantum observer, updating its internal models in light of incoming data. From this, one can draw a compelling parallel. If you consistently feed your internal model with coherent, emotionally vivid, and repetitive simulations of a desired outcome, you may effectively be training your neural system to treat that future as real before it occurs. This process, over time, modifies behavior, perception, and even physiological responses, creating feedback loops that reinforce that outcome's likelihood. In neural terms, Hebbian plasticity, cells that fire together wire together, gradually reshape synaptic networks to align with the imagined state. But beneath that lies an even deeper substrate. Let's now consider the zero-point field, ZPF. In quantum electrodynamics, QED, the vacuum is not truly empty, it teems with zero-point energy, even at absolute zero temperature. These fluctuations have been observed in phenomena such as the Casimir effect, where two uncharged plates in a vacuum attract each other due to the suppression of vacuum modes between them. Some theorists have speculated that the ZPF acts as a universal background information field, a kind of energetic canvas upon which particles and events are drawn. If consciousness is capable of interfacing with this field, even in a limited or indirect way, then it might be able to bias certain outcomes at the micro-level through mechanisms not yet fully understood. This would be consistent with weak quantum causality, where small fluctuations at the quantum level are amplified into macroscopic effects over time through chaotic dynamics, something akin to the butterfly effect, but seeded from within. Furthermore, decoherence theory, which explains the transition from quantum to classical behavior, tells us that once a system interacts with its environment, it loses its quantum nature. However, some biological systems seem to maintain quantum coherence under ambient conditions. Research into quantum biology, still a young field, has revealed that certain processes in photosynthesis, avian navigation, and even human olfaction may rely on quantum coherence and tunneling. This suggests that life itself might be fundamentally quantum coherent in ways classical models cannot fully describe. If this is the case, then consciousness, which emerges from such systems, may also exhibit quantum properties. Not in the Hollywood sense of instant teleportation or time travel, but in subtler, cumulative ways, by biasing probabilities, collapsing certain futures over others, and interacting with the informational geometry of the quantum field. When this interaction is intentional, structured, and emotionally coherent, it may act as a subtle, quantum signature embedded in the field, increasing the odds of resonance with a desired future state. This is no longer speculation alone. Physicist Anton Zeilinger, who won the 2022 Nobel Prize for his work in quantum entanglement and quantum information, has repeatedly emphasized that information is more fundamental than particles. In this light, consciousness, which processes, structures, and generates meaning from information, might not be produced by matter, but rather entangled with it through deeper informational laws we do not yet fully understand. So when we speak of a quantum leap of consciousness into a new future, we are not necessarily invoking fantasy. We are describing the possible result of neuroplastic change, quantum statistical shift, informational resonance, and coherence amplification, all of which are grounded in known physics and biology, even if their interconnections remain largely theoretical. If we extend this reasoning, we must confront one of the most fundamental tensions in modern physics, the measurement problem. What exactly constitutes an observer? Does it require consciousness, or can any interaction with a classical system suffice to cause wave function collapse? While mainstream physics avoids attributing consciousness a direct role, pioneers such as Eugene Wigner, John von Neumann, and Wolfgang Pauli speculated that consciousness may, in fact, play a key role in resolving uncertainty. Wigner even proposed that the collapse of the wave function may occur only when a conscious observer becomes aware of the measurement, suggesting that the mind may have ontological weight in shaping physical reality. These ideas were marginalized during the rise of more instrumentalist approaches in physics, but recent developments in quantum information theory have revived some of their implications. If the universe is fundamentally informational, and if information requires a recipient or processor, then the role of the conscious observer is more than incidental. Consciousness might not just perceive reality, it may help select it from a cloud of infinite potentialities. Now consider how this selection process might occur. The Born rule in quantum mechanics states that the probability of a particular outcome is proportional to the square of the amplitude of the wave function associated with that outcome. But what determines the amplitude? In traditional theory, it's simply the evolution of the system's state vector. But some speculative models propose that attention, intention, or coherence, if linked to quantum-level processes in the brain or body, could affect these amplitudes. While this is not yet experimentally verified, it is not prohibited by any known physical law. Let's further anchor these concepts in thermodynamics and entropy. The future is classically associated with increasing entropy, disorder grows over time. However, quantum coherence represents local order. Meditation and mental focus may temporarily reduce entropy in neural systems, creating islands of coherence that ripple outward. Neuroscientific studies have shown that practices like transcendental meditation and focused visualization increase functional connectivity across brain regions, reduce cortisol levels, enhance heart rate variability, and even affect telomere expression, a marker of cellular aging. These effects are measurable, repeatable, and statistically significant. They show that inner state affects outer physiology, hinting at deeper links between mind and matter. From the standpoint of nonlinear dynamical systems, reality may be viewed as a multi-stable system, one with many possible equilibria. Small perturbations at key points can cause bifurcations, where the system chooses a new trajectory. Your life path, seen this way, is not linear and determined, but a landscape of attractors, each corresponding to a potential future. Through focused intention, coherent emotion, and sustained action, you may nudge yourself out of one attractor basin into another, initiating a phase transition in your identity and outcomes. Some parallels emerge in quantum annealing, a computational process used in machines like those developed by D-Wave systems. These devices explore vast solution spaces by temporarily entering a state of quantum superposition, allowing them to feel out optimal solutions by tunneling through energy barriers rather than climbing over them. Human consciousness, in a metaphorical but potentially literal sense, may be capable of the same, bypassing slow, deterministic changes and instead leaping into new configurations of self and circumstance, if the system enters a sufficiently coherent, low-noise, resonant state. Thus, the quantum leap of consciousness is not about defying science, it is about engaging with science at the edge. It challenges us to reconsider the role of the observer, the nature of time, the architecture of possibility, and the mechanics of intention. It invites us to see the future not as a distant endpoint, but as a spectrum of entangled waves, waiting for resonance, waiting to be observed. And if that's true, then rewriting your future becomes a question of tuning, of aligning thought, emotion, and physiology into a state of deep coherence, one that matches the frequency of the future you seek. When that alignment occurs, change may not unfold slowly, but suddenly. Not gradually, but quantumly. In the cutting-edge fields of quantum gravity and emergent spacetime, researchers are beginning to question even the primacy of space and time themselves. In theories such as loop quantum gravity and holographic duality, spacetime may not be fundamental but instead emerge from a deeper substratum of entangled quantum information. If this is true, then your perception of reality as a sequence of events unfolding in time is only a projection, a high-level interface your brain constructs from an underlying informational process. This resonates with the notion that consciousness might be a decoder of potential, not just a mirror of what is, but an interpreter of what could be. Just as quantum fields ripple with endless virtual fluctuations, consciousness might continuously sample from a cloud of potential experiences. The act of choosing, by thought, belief, or sustained attention, would then function as a filter, collapsing one version of reality from this broader field. Experiments in psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics, and noetic sciences continue to uncover how inner states translate into physical outcomes. For example, Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn's work on telomerase revealed that meditation and lifestyle change can increase enzyme activity that preserves chromosome integrity, slowing cellular aging. Dr. Joe Dispenza, though often cited in more speculative circles, has collaborated with neuroscientists and biologists to measure profound physiological shifts during intensive meditation, such as increased IgA antibodies, gamma brainwave bursts, and heart-brain coherence. While interpretation of his findings varies, the physiological data themselves are real. These changes are not mere stress responses. They appear to correlate with shifts in internal identity. Participants often report that they no longer identify with their past, but feel aligned with a new future version of themselves. This subjective transformation, paired with biological markers, suggests that the mind-body system is capable of reconfiguring itself in response to perceived reality, even before that reality physically manifests. This is reminiscent of quantum retrocausality experiments, such as those by Yakir Aharonov and Jeff Tollickson, which imply that events in the present may be influenced by future boundary conditions. In a universe where both past and future can influence now, your alignment with a possible future self might exert subtle causal influence backward in time, biasing present actions and perceptions. This concept, while speculative, fits mathematically within two-state vector formalism and the block universe interpretation of time. In this model, every moment of conscious focus toward a new reality becomes a kind of gravitational pull in the informational structure of spacetime, a tug toward a branch of the multiverse where that reality already exists. Just as quantum tunneling allows particles to pass through barriers without the classical energy required, so might consciousness tunnel into a new version of self, not by overcoming the past, but by no longer energizing it. Importantly, this does not imply escapism. It demands a high degree of awareness, emotional regulation, and consistency. You must become the version of yourself that already exists in the future you wish to experience. This is not wishful thinking, it is identity entrainment. Your nervous system, your behaviors, your thoughts, and even your posture must begin to reflect the frequency of that version of you. And the more coherent that signal becomes, the more clearly it imprints itself into your physiology and, if theories of quantum information are correct, into the field. This coherence, in measurable terms, has been studied extensively by the HeartMath Institute. Their research suggests that when the heart and brain enter a state of synchrony, characterized by smooth, ordered heart rate variability, cognitive function improves, stress hormones drop, and emotional resilience increases. The electromagnetic field of the heart, which extends several feet beyond the body, becomes more ordered and possibly interacts with environmental fields. Some researchers propose that this heart-brain harmony may serve as a carrier wave for intention, a stable energetic platform from which to broadcast your future into being. In this light, the quantum leap of consciousness is not about violating natural laws, but about learning how to partner with them at a deeper level. It is about stepping out of the narrow corridor of deterministic cause and into a wider theater of quantum possibility, where choice, awareness, and coherence rewrite the script in real time. Let us now venture even deeper, toward the edges where science meets speculative metaphysics, yet remains tethered to mathematical and experimental scaffolding. One of the most profound implications of quantum mechanics is the non-locality of information. This is not science fiction, it has been demonstrated repeatedly through Bell test experiments, most notably those by Ilan Aspect, Anton Zeilinger, and others. When two particles are entangled, a change in one instantaneously affects the other, no matter the distance. This suggests that on some level, space as we perceive it is an illusion, or at least not fundamental. The structure of the universe may instead be holistic, with everything connected through a shared, non-local informational substrate. This idea is echoed in the holographic principle, which posits that the three-dimensional world is a projection from two-dimensional information encoded at the boundary of the universe. The most famous formulation of this principle comes from one Meldesena's AD/CFT correspondence, a duality between a gravity-containing bulk and a lower-dimensional quantum field theory without gravity on the boundary. Though highly abstract, this theory implies that our experienced reality, space, time, matter, might emerge from entangled information on a deeper level of reality. If this is the case, then consciousness, defined not by neurons, but as an informational process, could, in principle, interact with this lower-dimensional code. In the same way a small change in a hologram affects the whole image, a focused shift in internal information, i.e., consciousness, might influence the projection we experience as physical reality. You are not creating a new future from nothing, you are tuning into an already encoded future, one among many possible projections within the universal hologram. Now let's bring in the concept of quantum potential, introduced by physicist David Bohm. In his interpretation of quantum theory, known as the pilot wave theory, particles are guided not by force, but by a quantum potential field that carries information about the whole system. This quantum potential is non-local and instantaneous, able to affect particles regardless of distance. In Bohm's view, the universe is not made of separate things, but of processes guided by implicate order, an underlying wholeness from which explicate, visible, phenomena unfold. He described consciousness itself as a special kind of movement of information within this implicate order. In other words, thought is not inside the brain, it is part of the same flowing, unfolding reality that guides particles and galaxies alike. The act of intention, then, becomes a navigation within this deeper order. And if the brain and heart are instruments of coherence, they may allow access to finer scales of the implicate field, where future timelines, entangled in superposition, await alignment. This echoes ancient mystical traditions not by accident, but perhaps because wisdom accumulated over millennia through inner observation found metaphors for what science is now mathematically modeling, that reality is not static but responsive, participatory, and fundamentally informational. From a quantum thermodynamics perspective, we now know that even information has thermodynamic cost. Landauer's principle shows that erasing one bit of information produces a minimum amount of heat. This connects mind and energy, changing information, e.g., belief, memory, thought pattern, is not metaphysically symbolic, it is physically real. The brain consumes energy, alters entropy, and shifts neural phase space patterns as thoughts shift. If you continuously rewrite your internal code, your narrative, your identity, you are, in the literal sense, altering the physical state of your being and its informational footprint in the field. Moreover, advances in quantum machine learning and probabilistic modeling show that complex systems can be optimized by temporarily allowing ambiguity, or what's known in computation as exploration over exploitation. In life, this is akin to stepping into the unknown, embracing uncertainty, and allowing yourself to move outside habitual patterns. Meditation, altered states of consciousness, deep introspection, these are not escapes from reality, but ways to widen the exploration space, allowing quantum-like optimization of future pathways before settling into a new answer. In that view, rewriting your future is not a one-time act. It is a continuous quantum process. Establishing coherence in the observer. Embedding intention in the informational substrate. Reinforcing it biologically through neural and genetic plasticity. And aligning behavior with that chosen trajectory until it stabilizes into a classical outcome. You are not merely reacting to a future handed to you, you are, quite literally, in a state of constant entanglement with countless potential futures, each pulling subtly at your present. The question is, which one will you collapse into? Shall we now explore what such a process might look like practically, what it would mean, step by step, to tune into a future self using these principles? If your consciousness plays an active role in the selection of possible futures, as quantum theory, neuroscience, and information-based physics suggest, then tuning into a future self is less about effort and more about alignment. This process involves 5 core stages, each rooted in both empirical science and the emerging paradigm of participatory reality. 1. Inducing a state of quantum coherence. In both physics and biology, coherence is the foundation of stability, order, and resonance. In the brain, coherence refers to the synchronous firing of neurons across regions, an indicator of integrated information processing. In quantum systems, coherence is what allows particles to remain in superposition and entanglement. The more coherent a system, the more it can resonate with hidden potentials. Scientific basis: studies show that meditation, especially heart-focused techniques, increases alpha and gamma wave synchrony, enhances vagal tone, and brings heart rate variability, HRV, into a smooth sinusoidal pattern, a hallmark of psychophysiological coherence. Application: begin each day with 10 to 20 minutes of breath work and focused attention on the heart center. Generate feelings of elevated emotion, gratitude, love, awe. These modulate the autonomic nervous system and reduce limbic noise. Let the body enter stillness so the brain can enter a receptive mode, theta-alpha state, a prerequisite for intentional neuroplasticity. 2. Broadcasting a coherent intent into the field. Once coherence is established, the system is ready to project intentional information. In quantum terms, you are reducing entropy by encoding structure, a directional arrow into a field of statistical chaos. This is where focused visualization and identity modeling come into play. Scientific basis: fMRI studies show that visualizing an event activates the same brain regions as actually experiencing it. The reticular activating system is primed by imagined experience, leading to increased awareness of opportunities aligned with that imagined state. Application: construct a clear mental model of your desired future self, not the things they have, but who they are. Imagine it in first-person perspective, engaging all senses. Feel the emotional signature of already being that version. This is critical, as emotion is the energetic carrier of the information. 3. Rewriting neural and epigenetic programs. A future self must be embodied. Visualization alone is insufficient if the body remains addicted to old hormonal signatures. Stress, guilt, anxiety, and shame are chemically reinforcing loops that anchor you to the past. To shift timelines, the body must learn to feel the future. Scientific basis: Hebbian learning, neurons that fire together wire together. Epigenetics: environmental signals, including thoughts and emotions, regulate gene expression via histone modification and DNA methylation. Neuroendocrine change: sustained shifts in emotional baseline influence neurotransmitter and hormone profiles, altering perception and behavior. Application: practice emotional rehearsal, spend time each day embodying future state feelings until they become familiar. Interrupt unconscious emotional addictions: when old emotional patterns arise, use breath and awareness to disrupt the feedback loop. Reinforce changes through microactions aligned with the new identity. This signals to the nervous system that the shift is real. 4. Aligning behavior with the new quantum trajectory. Quantum leaps do not occur in the absence of action. Once the internal signal is coherent, the body must enact the new timeline. Every choice becomes a measurement, a confirmation of identity. In physics, decoherence happens when a quantum system irreversibly interacts with its environment. Likewise, your future collapses into reality when internal change meets consistent external behavior. Scientific basis: behavior is encoded in basal ganglia loops, which must be repatterned by repetition. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, demonstrates that action shapes thought just as much as thought shapes action. Habit formation studies show that identity-based habits, e.g., I am someone who meditates, are more stable than outcome-based ones. Application. Align daily routines with the energetic signature of your future self. Make choices that are consistent with who you intend to be, even before evidence appears. Track micro-wins and reinforce them with self-recognition and positive feedback. 5. Observing feedback and refining the signal. In quantum mechanics, measurement creates a reality but also disturbs it. Similarly, as you move through the world, the environment gives feedback, subtle signals of alignment or misalignment. This is where awareness without attachment becomes essential. Scientific basis. Predictive coding in neuroscience suggests the brain updates its internal model based on prediction error. The Bayesian brain constantly refines expectations in light of new data. Quantum systems require multiple measurements for high-confidence outcomes. The same applies to behavioral identity shifts. Application. Reflect daily. Where did I act from the future? Where did I default to the past? Adapt with curiosity, not judgment. Trust the latency period. Just as quantum events are probabilistic, so too is change. Remain coherent and the system will converge over time. In this full-spectrum approach, rewriting your future becomes a process of 1. Inducing a quantum-ready state of coherence. 2. Projecting a new identity into the field. 3. Restructuring neurobiological systems to match that identity. 4. Acting in alignment with the selected potential. 5. Refining based on feedback while remaining energetically stable. You are the observer. You are the field. You are the measurement. The quantum leap is not something you force. It is something you allow, by becoming the version of yourself who already lives in that future. Let's now expand even further into the philosophical and cosmological implications of this framework, integrating the latest insights from quantum foundations, cosmopsychism, and the science of consciousness. If we accept that you are not merely in the universe, but that the universe is, in some deep sense, in you, then the act of rewriting your future becomes an act of co-creation with the cosmos itself. Consciousness as a fundamental substrate. Modern physics increasingly hints that consciousness may not be emergent, but fundamental, not the result of complexity, but a primal layer of being. This view, known as panpsychism or cosmopsychism, has been gaining traction even among mainstream philosophers of mind and theoretical physicists. Notable voices include David Chalmers, who suggests that consciousness is a basic constituent of the universe, like mass or charge. Giulio Tononi, whose integrated information theory, IIT, mathematically quantifies consciousness as intrinsic causal power. Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, who propose that microtubules within neurons exhibit quantum coherence, allowing consciousness to interface with the structure of spacetime itself. If these models are correct, then consciousness is not confined to your skull. It is a distributed, field-like phenomenon. Your subjective awareness is a localized expression of a universal consciousness field, much like a whirlpool is a local pattern in a river. Therefore, when you meditate, visualize, and align with a new potential, you're not sending a signal out into an empty void, you are activating a latent pattern within a living informational cosmos. The multiverse as a mirror of intention. In the many worlds interpretation, MWI, of quantum mechanics, every possible outcome of every quantum event actually exists in a branching multiverse. The universe does not collapse options, it expresses them all. This means there are, in a literal physical sense, versions of you living every possible life you could have chosen, successes, failures, awakenings, breakdowns, joy, regret. When you focus deeply on a particular outcome with emotional and physiological alignment, it is as if you are tuning into one of those existing branches. The future you seek already exists, you're not creating it from scratch, but rather shifting your experiential channel to match that version of reality. Just as a quantum computer explores multiple solutions simultaneously, your consciousness may interact with multiple selves, selecting the one that resonates most strongly with your internal state. This is not metaphorical fantasy, it is mathematically plausible within the unitary evolution of the quantum wave function. The physics of identity. Physicist Max Tegmark has proposed that consciousness arises from particular mathematical structures, patterns of information processing that are self-aware. He calls this view the mathematical universe hypothesis, where every coherent mathematical structure corresponds to a physical reality. If identity is ultimately informational and mathematical, then it can be rewritten, much like a software algorithm. Every time you choose new thoughts, beliefs, emotional tones, and behaviors, you are rewriting the code of your identity. Over time, this new identity acts as a new attractor in the dynamical landscape of the quantum field. The deeper the coherence between your thoughts, feelings, and actions, the stronger the informational signature you emit. This is why ritual, repetition, and emotional intensity matter. They encode information into both neural architecture and, potentially, into the quantum field. Time as a feedback loop. In conventional physics, time is linear. But in block universe theory, also called eternalism, all moments, past, present, future, exist simultaneously as part of a four-dimensional spacetime structure. You are simply experiencing the present slice of that structure. But if future states exist now, just not yet observed, then your consciousness might act as a retrocausal agent, one that selects timelines not just from the past forward, but from the future backward. Experiments like the delayed choice quantum eraser support the idea that decisions made in the present can affect how past events are interpreted in quantum systems. This raises a powerful possibility. By connecting emotionally and cognitively with your future self, you might influence present behaviors and conditions in a way that aligns with that future. Time becomes less a chain of causes and more a loop of mutual resonance. In light of all this, you are not a passenger in a deterministic universe. You are a waveform in evolution, a node in a cosmic network of entangled information, capable of reconfiguring your trajectory in real time. You are part of a participatory universe, as physicist John Wheeler envisioned, where observers don't just collapse probabilities but bring forth meaning from the void. Your thoughts are not small. Your attention is not trivial. Your imagination is not fiction. They are interfaces with a quantum field that contains all potential forms of you. And the leap, the so-called quantum jump of consciousness, is the act of claiming that truth not just intellectually, but biologically, emotionally, behaviorally. You are not waiting for the future. You are becoming it. Shall I continue with a final synthesis or blueprint summarizing the full quantum model of conscious future selection? Two halves. And so, the journey from possibility to reality is not one of force, but of resonance. It is not a matter of time, but of tuning. The universe does not respond to who you were, or even to what you want, it responds to who you are being, moment to moment. You are the instrument, the frequency, and the field. Every coherent thought, every elevated emotion, every conscious action is a signal, a vote cast in favor of a new reality, a new self, a new line through the infinite fabric of space and time. The quantum leap of consciousness is not an explosion. It is a refinement, a gentle but unwavering realignment with the version of you that already exists in potential, just waiting for you to notice. You do not need to wait for a breakthrough moment. You are the breakthrough. Not someday. Not when conditions are perfect. But now. In this moment. In this breath. In this choice. The future is not something you find. It is something you remember. It is something you become. And when you finally embody it, not with effort, but with clarity, The universe will whisper back. Yes. This is the one.